One thing I did want to talk about this week, which it's not like major news, but I feel like it was a good watch. Eru Kapa Kingi was
Hell yes.
on Q&A with Jack Tame, which I thought was kind of cool. Talking about the Hikoi and his role in the Hikoi, and then also kind of the future of Māori governance and what they want to see, what the future could look like. I like the ideas that they're discussing. I have a kind of an insight about what they're discussing, and I understand where the sort of Maori position is and where the future Maori generation and their vision of the country and their rights and their future as a people, I guess, more so than anything. I understand that. I don't know if this interview was great for his cause, though, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
And
I actually
I want
haven't
to.
seen this yet. I've
You
been
have?
meaning to.
We haven't.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
So
I'll just pull out mostly this part because I think this is kind of the crux of the interview where he's talking about those big, I guess those more academic framework kind of ideas with from Margaret Motu and Moana
yes.
Jackson. They don't really go into big detail about what those are because they are such high level, but essentially the conversation that I'll show you is about that, the lack of tangible or concrete vision or ideas of what things could look like in the system or framework that they want to start implementing.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'll have a quicker listen, and then you can let me know what you think when I press the button.
Te Tiriti is simply as a platform to bring those minds together and to provide some clarity around what you've just asked.
So you, I think, have often referenced the Matike Mai report, which was put forward or led by Margaret Motu and Moana Jackson.
Yes.
And that had 6 different concepts, 6 different kind of constitutional spheres or frameworks for what an Aotearoa hou might look like. Did you personally think that one of those constitutional frameworks looked best?
I think that they all have their benefits. Some of them have their drawbacks as well. The frameworks themselves, I think, are less important than the principles that are discussed in that report. And via Margaret Motu herself, has also said to me on a number of occasions that the frameworks are there really as a starting point, but what matters is those principles and then really how we operationalize those principles using those frameworks and whatever frameworks work best, particularly in this ever-changing world that we're in.
So just...
That just gives a brief background as to what he's about to go into next.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you have knowledge about that you want to expand on there?
I mean, to be fair, I mean, I've spoken about Matike Mai briefly in points because obviously I learned about it through my studies. But I mean, it was a great, because actually it's what I referenced when I was challenging Duncan last week. Is that, we have He Puapua and the Matike Mai report, which are basically, especially with the Matike Mai one, it was actually, I should find it because it was an amazing piece of work that was done by so many people. So they consulted with people literally across the motu, and it wasn't just, adults. They had a rangatahi, groups where they would have young people kind of talk to them, and it was very much led with Mātauranga Māori, which is kind of like different, basically, I guess, values and principles, allowing people to kind of lead the conversation rather than how a lot of the time, especially, even just interviews are a great example. There's always very pointed, specific questions because they know how they want to control the interview or whatever. Whereas in Mātauranga Māori, it's generally centered around the people. So they get to decide what's important. They get to decide, what they think should be considered and all of that kind of thing. Because while you can still maybe end up with some of those other points, it's about making sure that you're actually capturing what people actually want and need. So for me, it's just one of the, it's so rich in knowledge. It's also something that you don't see a lot because in a lot of, I guess, more Western types of reports, it's very clinical and lacking in humanity and soul almost a lot of the time. And And that's where, Matike Mai was an awesome project. I highly recommend if people want to, like, I know the documents are online. I have it somewhere saved on my computer in amongst all my university mess, so I have no idea where it is right now. But yeah, and He Puapua was another report off the back of that. But there was, Carwin Jones worked on it. Yeah, so many amazing names. And it's basically putting down the whole fact of, like, what I was saying to Duncan last time, is that the conversations we really need to be having is, hey, do we realize that we set our country up in a way that actually was completely wrong to begin with? And now we have to find some way to rectify that, while also acknowledging that it's a really complicated thing to try to actually make. And that's what those models he was talking about, is that they had, there's images, they're great. They basically put it into context of how different spheres of government and all of those things could work together, and rough frameworks and ways that they might be able to approach that. And I mean, had they kept taking it further, then, they would have been able to kind of start working more on refining, between what, say Crown and Māori think would be the better options. But we're not going to get it with these guys.
We'll get back into what Jack asks next. I think you did a really good job of sort of preambling what he's about to say, and just get some.
Oh, I did a Chewie. Hey,
you did a Chewie. You did a very good job. You did a Chewie, which is great.
Let's go.
Yeah, so he's basically asking the question of how do you conceptualize these big, how do you communicate these big ideas that perhaps the non-academics in the room, or the Māori hating people, are just not going to get,
in this ever-changing world that we're in.
So just to lay it out for people, there was, I think, 3 of those 6 constitutional spheres had some form of kind of a 3-way system. So you had a rangatiratanga sphere, a kāwanatanga sphere, so a sovereignty sphere, a kāwanatanga sphere, so like a government sphere, and a relational sphere, which would define the relationship between those two things. Do you support something like that?
I think that's the greatest, what we would call in Te Ao Māori, te iho nui or te kauhanga nui, which is the middle ground. That's that middle part of the whare where I suppose the greatest potential lies, and where the greatest benefit lies as well.
So you've supported Te Ngāka o te iwi Māori, which is a Māori Party policy calling for a separate Māori parliament. How would that work?
I think how that would work, we won't really know until we try it, right? And the thing about Te Ngāka o te iwi Māori, ideas around Māori banks and different, I guess, manifestations of sovereignty and the truth that we never ceded sovereignty, many people are quick to shoot them down and will think, oh, that's impossible, there's no way that can work. But the point is to have the conversation.
And I guess that follows in really well from what you were discussing with Duncan last Friday, was I guess what he was saying was this idea of a Māori parliament just doesn't sit in the real world. It doesn't make sense in the current framework that we're in. But I think he missed the point of we need to consider it as an idea, like, as an expanding of the Waitangi Tribunal. I think he perhaps he didn't really. I agree the way he communicated probably was quite dismissive, and I agree with it, why you challenged him on it. But I think those conversations do need to happen. And that's what he's saying here is, like, we don't know what a Māori parliament could look like. We're not saying that we're just going to, cut half the, country in half and Māori are going to go and do their own thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's not what he's saying. They're realists in that way. But the conversations also need to be had about, like, how does the future look, We got the Waitangi Tribunal. We're partway there.
I think, though, that, I think one of the things that I just kind of was thinking about when you said Māori Parliament is that people probably hear the word Māori Parliament and think separate. No, the point was always to have the representatives from the landowners, i.e. Māori, and then the representatives from the Crown. They were to have their own sovereignties, their own way, they're basically able to dictate and rule over themselves while still having a relationship that it's just a relationship between two groups. And yeah, they can get messy at times. And I mean, because we didn't do it properly to begin with, it is going to be so much harder to do backwards. And yeah, a Maori parliament wouldn't work under a Westminster framework because it shouldn't have to. We need to discuss the kind of the bones and the foundations, not these like extra things on top, because that's the problem is people are trying to tack, like even when it comes to the Waitangi Tribunal, like the way that they handle things is basically trying to take the Westminster system and either add on or manipulate here, when really no, it's actually the whole system needs to be changed in order to actually accommodate and function properly and be just fit for purpose, I think, really.
Yeah. We'll continue to hear his answer here.
Down and we'll think, oh, that's impossible. There's no way that can work. But the point is to have the conversation and to socialize at least the idea and therefore grow the belief and the possibility of that being a thing. Because as I said before, we're working against a backdrop of 200 years of oppression, and our ability to believe and to see a future different to the reality we're living right now has been severely restricted. And so that's what all of these efforts of liberation are geared towards, is building the belief from the inside.
Do you think, though, that people maybe...
Beautifully said. The next question is, I guess, getting into the nitty-gritty, and he does get challenged quite a bit here. I think this is where, like any time that you're on with Jack Tame, he will grill, and I think he tends to come off better and in kind of having that counterpoint of view, unless you're really, really good at it. I think this is unfortunate because Eru here he's not a politician. He's an advocate, I think, is the big thing.
Yeah.
In a lot of
ways.
He's
a real person. Like, Eru's not some person that sits there and comes up with these fancy things. He's just a real person who's just literally saying what he believes in. Like, he's just a normal fucking human.
Yeah, like, just like you or I, if we were in that seat, I would hope that Jack would be a little bit nicer, because we're not politicians making policy. But he does get grilled here, and I think this is where he gets a little bit walked over, and it annoys me, because I don't think that was the purpose of this, to grill him. But it's really about those specifics and wanting clear answers, which is not the point. It's the discussion, it's the bigger ideas that he really is trying to communicate, that we need to start the conversation. I'm not proposing anything concrete.
Is building the belief from the inside.
Do you think, though, that people maybe shoot it down because there's no meat on the bone with a lot of these concepts? They're really broad, grand concepts, a different constitutional sphere. But actually people say, what does that mean in practical terms? And at the moment, they're struggling to understand the answer.
I think that's secondary. I think primarily it's a fear response. It's a fear of the unknown. It's the fear of the different. And probably the lack of detail might add to that kind of irritation and fear response.
Can you give us some detail?
I cannot. But luckily...
how can you advocate for it if you can't actually picture what it'll mean in real terms?
Because I believe it's possible. I know it's possible. And I know it's real, because that's the world that my ancestors lived in not even 200 years ago. Right? So I know it's a real thing. I know it's happened before. Like, it's not a new idea. It's really reverting back to the reality of the world that my tupuna lived in. So I know that it's real. How it's real, we can figure out. But the point is to get on the waka, launch it on the moana, and start our journey. And when we're on the moana, that's when we'll learn actually the most.
So you support Te...
So my white side heard, what does it look like in practical terms? We're sailing on vibes. We'll sort of see what happens. That's what I'm hearing from the person who's going to go, what is he saying? The other thing I heard was going back to the way things were. That's going to piss off some people, even though it's not what he's saying. Yeah, but he is right about the fear response, right? He did a really good job of saying the fear part first, and calling people out for being scared of it. But then he also kind of said the things that they fear the most, of like, you want to take us back, you want to control us and change the way we do things here. It's that stuff that freaks people out, I think, and especially from someone who looks the way that Eru does.
Yeah.
The racists in our country are all going to go, oh my God, the Māori are
that's what
taking
I find
over. They want to
so
do parliament.
But this thing is, that's what's so funny, right? The reason they think like that is because they think that Māori will do to Pākehā what Pākehā did to Māori. And end of the day, we ain't yous. If anything, all our people were doing were actually looking after people who ended up here, because a lot of them, they didn't come here with purpose like our tupuna did. They just fucking ended up here by accident or because they were trying to find the edge of the fucking world. Our people welcomed them in, gave them, resources and spaces to exist because all good, hospitality and taking care of people and monarchy is like a huge part of that. So like, I think the fact that people think they're like, there's actually a comment here that I starred that I think is kind of relevant as well. And it says, I do worry about talking about getting rid of the Westminster system entirely. And I just want to challenge this line where you say, getting rid of it could potentially be dangerous. Not every country in the world runs on a Westminster system. So why would it be dangerous? And in that, I want you to maybe think about the fact that there is actually some basically Westminster supremacy within that thought. And that's not me saying that you are a supremacist, but me simply pointing out that these biases such as that we hold can often be rooted from these places because we get told white is right. Like Westminster is safe. It's what we know. It's good. It's such a good system. We went across the world and forced it upon a bunch of people. But it's not necessarily the best system. And while I do understand it is scary to think about, I don't think we even necessarily need to get rid of everything. We just need to have it be something that is fit for purpose and can work for people. But yeah, it's a complicated conversation. And I think Jack does have a very good point, is it is hard for people to understand and grasp such a broad, vague concept. But it's also hard to grasp and think about, like, do people even realize that if we were set up properly, our country would look completely different now? Māori culture would have actually had a chance to continue to evolve rather than almost be killed and wiped out and then have to be reclaimed back. Like, there are so many things that we don't even include in these conversations, such as that, There are generations of my family who couldn't speak their language or couldn't live on their land still to this fucking day. And yeah, I understand the fear, but also we need to understand that it's a complicated conversation. And also, no one said you're racist. I don't know if that was for me, but no one said you're racist. We all have biases.
No, God, no.
And I actually implore you to go look up implicit bias tests. Harvard University have them. They're amazing. You can actually go in and do them for a bunch of demographics and actually it's really good to reflect and know where those biases sit so that you can begin to unpack them and dismantle them. Just highly recommend.
No, what I was saying there, I'm not calling him. Magenta knows exactly what I was saying.
Yeah,
is that from the background that I have from my I'm a white girl, as white as they fucking get. I can trace my lineage back to, I think, Holland or something. I'm as white as they get. So I understand the context of the people that are going to listen to that and freak out. And that's what I heard when I was sitting on the couch, is like, from the part of me that understands what he's saying, this is fascinating and I want to see where this goes. But I'm also highly educated, so I understand where he's coming from, the whole idea of frameworks and academics.
Yeah.
And I also get the very white side of me that comes from Southland that's hearing that and going, oh, fuck, these fucking Māoris Maoris want to take over our land, and they want to take my farm from me. And like that, there are people like that, and you got to try and bring them along. And I worry that this didn't do it.
Yeah, and I mean, that is a very,
I think that's
very
the thing.
fair
You just
point.
got to keep having those challenging conversations, and we've got to try and meet, But there's just
And I mean, the thing is, though, you bring up a really good point, and that is something that I think even as a leftist community, we have to figure out, how can we appeal to those people to break that cognitive dissonance, because a lot of the time it could be broken by having something personal close to them. There are ways that, and I don't think I'm the person or necessarily BHN are the people to try to translate for them. Probably some Labour supporters are probably who should be the ones to translate for that demographic and audience. But I definitely think that there is a conversation to be had in that of how can we kind of educate and help people understand what it means and not just go, ugh, Mary's about to steal the radio waves.
Yeah. And that is always the position that I come from when I'm trying to figure out how do you communicate some of those amazing things that come out of Māori culture that are rooted in it, that are very people-centric. They're very much power to the people, like you were saying, like it's not decision from the top, it's decision of the group to move forward. And it's decision of many group that I think it's like the mini hapu that inform, they all send someone based on their decision as a group, send it to the iwi to then have the sort of chief discussion, I guess, to make the final decision, right?
To kind of put that into perspective from a historical standpoint, when the kingitanga was being basically established, most people didn't want to be the king, because whenever they would go to them, they'd basically be like, it's not my right to speak on behalf of all hapu and iwi, because I can speak to and I can lead my rōpū, my hapu, my iwi, because the thing about being a rangatira as a leader is it's not about just commanding and telling people what to do. It's about being able to weave and navigate those relationships and the needs of the people. And if you can't do that, then you don't deserve to be a leader. And I think a lot of the values, they would be so helpful to everyone, whether they're Māori values or not. They're just human values that are more human-centric. So, yeah.
No, it's always, I think it's a growing discussion, and I think the next generation is definitely a lot more open-minded to this stuff. That's why we need to get Winnie out so that he can let the next generation in. I was thinking about the faces that can help kind of bring the other side in. I think Kieran's a great example of that, of someone who really champions, Māori involvement, their place in governance, and his infrastructure project. He was talking about how they had all that consultation, and they made it work, and now they've got a project that's going along, and it actually was successful. Like, it didn't take them, maybe it took them 7 years instead of 3, but everyone was happy at the end of the day, and actually they got something that was better because they did that consultation process. He has the face of a farmer, someone that they kind of look at and go, oh yeah, he's a good bloke. He sounds like a good bloke, but he's able to
actually relatable.
Yeah, but he's able to actually communicate the things that Māori are advocating for.
Yeah, and I mean, we do need those buffers, because like Margaret Matu said, we do need buffers to help be the people to kind of talk to the people who won't listen to, those that they don't want to listen to. So,
well, Eru, for example, who see Eru and go, freak out.
Yeah.
There's some really good people in the chat having some great discussion as well, and I think the idea of challenging your biases is really important too, and just
Oh, absolutely. We've all got to work on it, because we all just learn them fucking subconsciously through a bunch of bullshit, and it sucks. And we just have to try to undo it to be better people every day, really.
Yeah. So some cool stuff that came out of that conference. I mean, if you understand what he was saying, there's some really interesting, cool stuff out of that. And what were you saying, the Matike Mai?
Matike Mai? Yeah, Matike Mai report. If you look up literally Matike, so matikemai.maori.nz, and they have a reports page where you can download all the relevant reports to the kaupapa. So if you want the information, it's there for you. And maybe we should also look at talking to some people soon who could
not Matike Mai.
Yeah, Matike Mai.
Matike Mai.
Yeah.
Tike Mai.
But I reckon we should probably also, because I was thinking we should probably talk to some people about the RMA changes. So maybe I'll get in contact with my lecturer and we'll get her to maybe see if she can help us kind of thing. And also, Rogers, everyone's aggro because we're talking about Māori shit and, you know, getting rid of the Westminster
Calling out,
system.
yeah, we're calling out people's
Blowing
racist
up,
bias. Yeah.
blowing it up, bruh. I blew it up.